Hello, everyone. As you probably already know me. My name is Louis. I am really, really shy, so you probably don't talk to me much. I also have a fear of public speaking, so me becoming a pastor is really awkward. Never liked it, but I'm still here. I'm still following my calling. But it happens. Sometimes you get to do things that you don't want to, but here I am. So, how are you guys doing today? Amazing, because every single Sunday we have this, meet and greet. We just go up to someone and say, "Hey, how are you doing?" That process that we go through, and I have a question for you guys. When was the last time you answered that honestly? Especially when you're going through something really, really bad in your life. How many times have you actually took the time and answered someone saying, "I'm actually going through this, and this is really, really bad. I just need to tell you about it"? Or how many times have you asked someone that and expected them to reply to you like that besides, "Hey, I'm doing great. How about you?" And that just, makes me think we're just going through the motions. For example, if I say, "I'm excited," it happens, right? We just go through it. It's automatic. And it reminds me of, in the book of John, chapter 10, verse 10. It says, a, a thief, my grammar's a little bad. A thief comes only to steal and to kill and to destroy. I have come so that they may have life and have it in abundance. And you were probably thinking, how does that have to do with asking someone, "How are you doing today?" Well, for me, it really does. Because about 4 or 5 weeks ago, it really hit me. Because when I first started to understand we're going through the motions, how are you so important? So about 4 or 5 weeks ago, I was coming from Sister Marta's house. I was coming over here to the church to bring my little sister to youth night. And I was passing by 210, right passing the gas station that's there, and all of a sudden my car goes from third gear to first gear. And it goes to about 5,000 RPMs. I was kind of freaking out, and I was like, "Okay, what's going on? What's going on here?" So I let go of the gas, and I hit it again. It shifts all the way right back to third gear, and it goes right back down. I was freaking out. I was like, "Okay, let me just get somewhere where I can go." So I see the light, and it's red, so when I get to it, it should be green. And then I see my speedometer, 55, 50, 45, and I'm like, "Okay, I just need to get into it, get to the light. Hopefully it's green. I can just go without having to stop in the middle of the road." So I'm like, "Okay, it just turned green. I can make it." I get to the light, it turns red. So I'm right there at the intersection. I'm like, "Okay, what can I do? What can I do?" So I'm like, "Okay, maybe if it turns green, I can hit the gas, and hopefully I can get to the church. I can get to my mom's house. It's right here. I can do something." I hit the gas, and the car won't really go. I'm like, "Okay." So I put the hazard lights, and I call JJ. Long story short, I needed a new transmission. It was terrible. I didn't have enough money for a new transmission. And at that point, that was just my limit. I couldn't take anything else because recently in my work, I got promoted and I was in charge of this section in my work. And because of it, I have to fix everything else the other person did. Because how the other person left it, they were just kind of just going through the motions, just filling in the spots just as they came and not really looking for the future, looking for how can this person help me in the future. They weren't really doing that. So I had to come in, fix everything, and people have an attitude towards me saying, "How are you doing this? We're not supposed to do it this way." Or I changed something, and they tell me "You're doing it wrong. That's not how it works." They're telling me how to do something I implemented and telling me I'm doing it wrong. It just makes so much sense. And then I'm just going through MIP and just coming through so many things, and I was just overwhelmed. I was just done. I couldn't take anything else. Because, I was coming to church, doing all that, but, people come up to ask me, "How are you doing?" And I just smiled and said, "I'm doing great. I'm doing fine." So on the inside, I was just done with everything. I was just really going through the motions until it hit me. It was a week later, a friend let me borrow his car, and I'm driving to work. Usually when I drive to work, I start to think, what did I pray about last night? What do I need to pray about? And that's when it hit me that I didn't pray. the night before. I was like, that's when I just realized, what am I doing? Because something I always did when I first got hired at this job, I prayed every time I went to work. Because if you work in the factory, it's not really easy. It really isn't. And so when I got there, I prayed about everything. So it's like, if we were working in the factory, it's really loud, so I used to sing all the time. But now I just noticed when I went into work, it was just stress after stress. So when I got there, I didn't pray, I didn't do anything. I was just going through the motions, just fixing everything, just relying everything on what I can do, fix this, do that, and just completely forgot about God. It was just so overwhelming for me. So how are you asking me how this verse has to do with how are you doing? Well, it has to do so much because it says, a thief comes only to steal, to kill, and to destroy. But what's so significant about a thief? Why not a robber? Why not a crook? Why does it have to be a thief? Well, I was, praying one day over here at Sanders Worship Center, and I heard Brother Maurice actually talk about this verse one day. And he was saying the same exact thing. Why not a robber? Why a thief? And he said he was praying to God, and God gave him an answer. He said, a thief is so important. The reason why it's a thief is because a thief draws it out, makes a plan to get to you. He's not a robber who just picks a random house and goes in and steals. He thinks about it. He goes through the motions. He makes a plan to get to you. To how the verse says, to steal, to kill, and to destroy. There's a plan. There's a process to it. He's going to try to do that. So how do you do that? Look for weaknesses. And for me, not praying is like finding a weakness in me, going through the motions. So with that, it's like I wasn't putting the armor of God on. The breastplate of righteousness, the belt of truth, the feet fitted with the readiness of the gospel of peace, the shield of faith, and the helmet of salvation, and the sword of the Spirit. I wasn't putting that on every single day when I prayed. I used to do that every time I prayed. I was doing that. But when I was just going through the motions, I was forgetting to put certain things on, and that's how the enemy was getting to me. Because through the course of those months, I was just forgetting about things over and over. I was just being so overwhelmed. So when these things happened and the broken transmission came to be, I was just done with everything. I didn't want to do anything. Coming to church felt like a chore, like I was just doing more work, instead of just coming here with expectation to being filled with God. We missed that. I was missing that. And it was just like the story of David. With David, he was letting go of his responsibilities. For example, he's a king, and at this period of time, he was in the middle of war. Usually when at this time, the king goes with them when he goes to war. But instead in this story, he stays back, and he sees Bathsheba. And you know how the story turns out. He has an affair with her, basically. And because of that, how did it happen? He was letting go of his responsibilities. He was letting go of certain things he was supposed to do. Things that he was meant to do. So, with that said, how are you letting go of your responsibilities? How about your house? How about yourself? How about your family? When was the last time you sat down with your family with no TV, no cell phones, just sat down, ate, and actually had a conversation? How many times have you gone out with your best friend, and had a chat with them without a cell phone being involved? How many times have you just sat down and talked to someone? When did you have that last conversation with someone? When did you get in relationship with that? And if you haven't done that with them, how do you expect to do that with God? When was the last time you actually just sat down, just quiet, still, just sat down with God, regardless of everything that's going on outside? Because especially mothers know this, when, they're overwhelmed by their kids, they just want that peace and quiet. Right? So, they just need that peace and quiet. But how many times have you went and just got that peace and quiet for you and God to strengthen yourself so you can face the days outside? It happens. And, sometimes we're getting overwhelmed by certain things that, like why is this happening to me? Especially with me and that broken transmission. I was just done with everything. I was like, why is this happening? I don't have enough to fix this. How am I going to get to work? I'm asking God, why is this happening to me? And that's when I was thinking about the book of Job. Because if we look in the book of Job, I call it the book of Job because it's really funny. But if we look in the book of Job, he loses everything. Just everything. And if we go on to read, even in chapter 2, it even starts to affect his health. But if we read into chapter 2, even his wife is telling him, why don't you just curse God, just curse God and die. But he says something that's really, really interesting. And it basically says, must we only accept good from God? That just really hit me, especially when I was going through that. I was like, must we really accept only good from God? I mean, have you ever thought of the fact that you're going through these certain motions, these certain things, so you can just get up and rise and be stronger to face the next task that's ahead of you? Because especially with me and my work, I was like, why am I going through this? Why am I getting stuck in this position that I have to fix everything, and then when something goes wrong, I'm the one to blame? But then I'm thinking, I'm going to be a pastor. I'm going to be in charge of a church. I'm facing this now. I know in the future I'll be able to handle it, even though, so many things come my way. I'll be able to because of it. Of course, it'll still be stressful, but I'll have the endurance to be able to face it. I'll have the knowledge and just be able to face these things without having to worry. Something we have to also understand is that if you read in the book of Job, I read Job, so if we read in the book of Job, it never once says that God told him why he was going through all these things. I read it, but I've never read it once that said Job knew why God did that to him. So we need to understand that God goes before us, right? And let me just say that he knew this would happen. I mean, there's a second part of the verse. He says, I have come so that they may have life and have it in abundance. He knew we would fail eventually. One way or another, we would just get overwhelmed like I did and just be done with everything. He knew certain things like that would happen in every single one of our lives. We still have flesh and blood. We're going to fail. We're born into sin. It's going to happen. And he knew that we would need him to bring us back. So, how do we do it? How is this? When I was going through these things, when I first was getting into ministry, I didn't know how to do certain things. I was like, God, I need you. And I was just praying and seeking God, but no one really told me how to do it. They just always told me how to pray, seek God, and then act on it. I'm like, okay. Sometimes I never heard anything from God. I was like, okay, so what am I supposed to do now? So how do we do that? And then I was reading verse 9. It says, I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved and will come in and go out and find pasture. So I have an explanation with this. So can I have 3 volunteers to explain what is going on? I just need 3. Okay, so pastor, can you stand right there? Good. Can I have you stand on the other side? I'm actually going to have you stand to the side, and I'm going to use you in a little bit. Okay, so face each other. Okay, so. Okay. It says, I am the door if anyone enters by me. So, I want you to do something. I want you to take a step forward, but don't move your feet. Doesn't happen, right? You can't really do anything, right? All right, so I want you to pray. Do the same thing, but don't move your feet. Yes. Can you pray and do it?
And move forward?
Yep. Without moving your feet. No, right? Right? So, how are we supposed to do this? God's telling us, God, we're praying and seeking God, but then we don't even move. How are we supposed to get to the other side where God's telling us to go?
Right.
I mean, we can pray and seek God so much, but if we don't move, we can't get to the other side. When things come and face us, nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to happen. Then, I want you to get right in front of him. Then, turn around or anything is fine. Okay. So, now certain things come in front of us. Now we're ready to take that step. We're actually willing to take that step. But then, there's something in front of us. How are we supposed to get through that? When we need to get to the other side, when we see this, we stop. When we see opposition, we just stop. When we know, God, I can't take that step. He's right there. How am I supposed to get there?
Right.
What we need to do is just have that faith to take that step, and that God will move him out the way. We can't see the next step, but God will move us to the next step because he has called us to go to the other side. All right, now stop right there. But how many times have we just prayed and said, God, I want to get there. The gap is shortening, but how many times do we just go and take that next step, but next time he steps, I want you to step back. Okay? So go ahead. How many times have we just prayed and went with God, but how many times have we looked at this gap and the gap doesn't close? We're moving forward, but that gap doesn't close. I mean, sometimes we see the end goal is right there, but we're trying to walk and go towards it. Okay, thank you guys. You guys were a great example. But how many times have we walked and, God is right there. God is right there within arm's reach, but whenever we take that step, it looks like he's just further and further away, that we're not closing that gap. So how do we do that? We have to continuously seek, because that end goal is still going to happen there whether we want it to or not. But we just have to continuously seek God in order to get to it.
Yes.
And sometimes that gap is a lot closer than we think. We don't know the end goal. He does. We just have to seek him. I mean, how many times have you thought about this? We're going through this. But how many times have you thought about what you're going through is to strengthen you to take the next step? For example, if you're going on this flat hill right here, and you're praying, God, make it easier. God, make it easier on me so I can go to the next step. Of course, He's going to make it easier. But when you come up to a step like this, you won't have enough strength to even lift up your leg to go on to the next step. Sometimes you go through these things in order for Him to strengthen you so you can take that next step, to be able to go through the next step where He wants you to go. Of course, He's going to make it easier on you if you pray for it, but sometimes you need it in order to take that next step. You need it. Of course, seek and pray for Him, but pray for Him to guide you the right direction. Maybe you need to go through this in order for you to be strong enough to go where He needs you to be. I mean, especially when we're in our darkest places. A perfect example of this is David. David he came back to where his home was, and it was just gone. Everything was gone. They took his wife, his children, and, everything that was there, of the people that were there, everything was taken. Even his followers, his soldiers, wanted to stone him and kill him. But what does the Bible say? The Bible says that he strengthened himself in the Lord. So what did he do after that? He literally prayed and he listened to what God told him. He said, God, what should I do? Should I follow them and take them? And God said yes. So what did he do? He went after them and got everything back. He didn't lose one thing. He got everything back. But what if he would have done and, said, God, can I do this? And he didn't move. It would never happen. We have to take that step. We have to listen to what God says. Whether He says yes or no, we have to listen to Him and wait on Him so we can get to that next step. So with this, I'm going to close. So if I can have everyone to stand. So, all of us are going to be attacked one way or another. Whether we realize it or not, the second you believe in God or start listening to God, even if you're not a Christian, you're going to be attacked, so you're not going to follow God. You're going to. It's going to happen. And ministers especially need to strengthen themselves with God regardless of what you're going through. We have to put on the full armor of God every single day, regardless of everything that's going on in our lives. No matter how much you want to give up and just lose certain things, because things are so overwhelming, we have to seek God, especially then. I put mine on every single day by waking up and praying. But how do you do it? Because the second we don't really put on the armor of God, we start to change. We start to change into who we're not supposed to be, rather than the person we're supposed to be. We start to lose ourselves. With me at work, I was getting angry. I was just tired of everything. So when I got home, I was just get tired. I didn't even want to read the Bible. I started to believe that church was a chore, and I just didn't want to do anything anymore because it was just going to be more work. We must trust God in everything. We cannot lose ourselves and forget who we serve. And the enemy, he will come. He's trying to make plans so when you're here or when you're out there, he was trying to make plans so you stop following God. And he will especially attack you when you're down. But we have to remember the only reason that we're down is because we're praying to our God. We're praying and seeking him so he can help us, guide us to the next step. God is always going to be there. But are you going to be there seeking him? God every day is asking you, how are you? How are you? Are you willing to actually say, God, this is what's coming up in me. This is what's going on in my daily life. This is what I'm going through. Are you actually willing to answer? When I started working there, I prayed about everything. Because being in there, I really hate the cold. And it's always cold, about 42 degrees. I didn't like it. But I got through it. Now I'm working there for 2 years and I'm in charge of people. I got my promotion. I'm staying there a little bit longer until God tells me to leave. Are you willing to answer God and say, God, this is what I'm going through. Can you help me here? Where am I supposed to go? What should I do? What's my next step? I know you told me what the end goal is. How do I get there? Do I go this way or that way? Sometimes you just have to take that step of faith to get to it. And you can't see it. So the altar call is open to everyone needs it. Someone who just wants to pour out themselves unto God, or someone who just needs direction. Whoever needs it, it's up to you. The altars are open. We're ready here to pray.
When the music fades and all is stripped away, then I simply come